Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the Day 2 learning theory to uncover the invisible forces that are, quite literally, running the show in your daily life. Now, you probably think you're in total control of every choice you make, right? From the second your alarm goes off to the moment your head hits the pillow. But as we're about to see, there's actually a hidden architecture to human behavior. It's a silent system of rules that governs almost everything we do.
So, think about this. Have you ever noticed how quickly a toddler figures out that throwing a massive, screaming tantrum in the middle of a crowded supermarket magically gets them the exact chocolate bar they wanted? Or let's look at your own workplace habits. Why is it that you somehow always manage to power through a really brutal project when there's a nice financial bonus attached to it, but you completely drag your feet when there isn't? I want you to really consider these everyday scenarios, because I promise you, our most common behaviors are absolutely not a coincidence. There's a deeply ingrained mechanism at play here. What's actually driving all of this is something called operant conditioning. You can think of it as the hidden operating system that dictates human motivation. This was formalized back in the mid-20th century, and it goes way beyond just how we reflexively react to things. Instead, it looks at how the consequences of an action actually reach back in time, so to speak, to shape the behavior that came before them. It's literally the science of what happens right after you do something and how that specific consequence determines if you'll ever do it again.
Section 1. Inside the Skinner box. To really wrap our heads around how this invisible system governs our lives, let's travel back in time to the mid-20th century. We're going to meet a pioneering psychologist named B.F. Skinner. We'll explore his groundbreaking behavioral experiment that completely rewired how we understand motivation. Skinner wanted to test these ideas in a perfectly controlled environment, so he built what became famously known as the Skinner box. It was a deceptively simple setup. He took a small chamber, and inside this tiny box he placed a rat. The only real feature in this entire box was a single pressable lever. Skinner basically just wanted to see what would happen when the rat interacted with its environment, and more importantly, how the results of that interaction would change the rat's future behavior. The way this played out perfectly illustrates his findings. Imagine two very contrasting outcomes. In some iterations of the experiment, when the rat pressed the lever, a pellet of food dropped in, a reward, right? But in other iterations, pressing that exact same lever delivered a mild electric shock, an unpleasant consequence. Skinner watched this all unfold and realized that the brain acts as this meticulous, invisible scorekeeper. It's constantly recording both the positive and negative results of absolutely every action we take.
So the whole thing boils down to these golden rules of behavior. Skinner's discovery was incredibly straightforward, but honestly, it's profound. Rule 1, behaviors that are followed by something rewarding tend to get repeated. Rule 2, behaviors that are followed by something unpleasant tend to get dropped. Your brain is just constantly running this background calculation. It's tallying up what works and what doesn't, and quietly adjusting your future actions based entirely on this invisible score.
Section 2. The modern box.
Now, obviously, we aren't rats in a cage, but the fascinating truth here is that we live in our own modern boxes. Think about it. Every time your phone buzzes and you get a message that makes you feel good, you're being rewarded. The consequence is positive. So what happens? You check your phone more often. Or think about basic training techniques like teaching a new puppy or raising a child. When a child cleans their room and gets praise for it, they are significantly more likely to clean it again. On the flip side, look at workplace habits. Every time an employee gets completely ignored, no matter how hard they work, they eventually just stop trying. The reward, or the total absence of it, is doing all the heavy lifting in forming our habits.
Section 3. The catch with punishment. Okay, now we need to pivot to a slightly darker side of Skinner's findings. We've talked a lot about rewards, but we really need to examine why negative consequences, punishments basically, are fundamentally flawed when we're looking for long-term growth and behavioral change. Don't get me wrong, punishment definitely works, but there is a massive catch. Let's say step 1 happens. You receive a huge speeding fine for driving too fast, or you get a really harsh word from your boss for making a mistake. Step 2 immediately follows. You slow down or you double-check your work. The punishment successfully suppresses the bad behavior. But, and this is key, it only does so temporarily. And that brings us to the crucial difference between these two outcomes. Punishments only tell you what not to do. A speeding ticket tells you not to speed, sure, but it doesn't inherently teach you how to be a better, more attentive driver. It just leaves a behavioral vacuum. Rewards, on the other hand, actively tell you what you should be doing. That is exactly why rewards build lasting, positive behavior change, while punishments merely act as a temporary roadblock. Section 4. Willpower is a myth. Looking through this behavioral lens, we really need to completely reevaluate our own abandoned goals.
Think about those bad habits you've built up over the years, the ones you just can't seem to shake. How much of that is actually a lack of inner strength or willpower, and how much is simply a poorly designed environment? Honestly, relying on sheer willpower is a losing battle if the environmental consequences surrounding you are constantly rewarding the wrong things. And that leads us to this incredibly powerful realization from our source material. Quote, "You are far less in control of your behavior than you think." If Skinner was right, and decades of solid evidence strongly suggest he was, your actions are being shaped quietly, constantly, and relentlessly by the consequences that follow them. Ultimately, your behavior is just a product of your environment's design.
Section 5. Designing your own consequences.
But here is where we get to shift the narrative. We don't have to just be passive observers in all this. We can actually build our own personal reward systems. To create better outcomes, we have to intentionally design our consequences. Let's go back to those workplace habits. If you need to finish a really tough, boring project, do not just rely on willpower. Design a reward for yourself. Tell yourself that completing the first draft unlocks a specific treat, like grabbing your favorite coffee or taking a strict 15-minute break. The exact same logic goes for training a new puppy. You don't just wait around for the puppy to do something wrong and then punish it. You proactively set up scenarios where the puppy can do the right thing, and you immediately provide a high-value treat. You are intentionally designing the environment so the right behaviors are naturally rewarded and repeated.
So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. You now understand the Day 2 learning theory. You know that operant conditioning is the invisible matrix guiding your actions every single day. The big question is, once you know the rules of the game, can you start designing those consequences yourself? Can you actively take control of your environment, structure your own rewards, and ultimately become the architect of your own behavior? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to start looking at your daily habits through this fascinating new lens.